Coffee with Christ. Today we're going to be in chapter, actually moving on to another chapter. We are going to be in the chapter 21 today, Exodus chapter 21. It's great here to be. It's great to be here with you. We got some challenges that we're going to be challenging with you today, and we are just blessed to be here. Today we're going to be covering. Let's see here. Actually, no, we're actually in chapter 22 today. Chapter 22. And we're going to be looking at responsibilities of the properties, and we're going to kind of just skim through these because, again, a lot of them are just they're just laying out the foundation, and it's really neat because we're going to look at a lot of our laws come from these examples, and we're going to be able to look at these and go, wow, you know what, I can stand behind that, and praise God that the founders of our country really used the biblical principles to create our laws. And here's the deal, guys. If we don't, if you look at today, even these stimulus packages, this new one that they want to come out. I mean, they have all this junk in there that want to invest millions into marijuana clinics and all these different things. So the laws can change. The laws can change based on the morality of the people. So it's very important that we look to God's word and we get back to basics. And we kind of look at God's heart, right? So here in chapter 22, I'm going to have Laura go ahead and read. Are you ready, baby?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to have Laura go ahead and read, and then we'll just kind of skim through it, pick out some nuggets, and go ahead and expound on the nuggets and see how far we can get today.
Is your volume all the way up?
Yeah.
Okay, starting with Exodus 22. If a man steals an ox or a sheep, and slaughters it or sells it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. If the thief is found breaking in and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. Oh, that sounds like a familiar law today, right?
Yeah.
If the sun has risen on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. So let me read that again. If the sun has risen on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. He should make full restitution. Mm-hmm. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. If the theft is certainly found, alive in his hand, so I guess they were stealing animals because it's the only thing that's living, right? Whether it is an ox or a donkey or a sheep, he shall restore double.
How about you read? Is that verse 4?
I stopped on verse 4.
Okay, awesome. Let's just stop right there, and then we'll go ahead and expound on that. When you look at the Mosaic law here, it didn't send a person to jail because of theft. And when you think about that, it's actually a really good idea. I mean, how much would that save us, in taxes if we didn't have to pay for all the thieves? But instead, make them get a job and make them pay back what they had stolen. That's kind of what they did. Instead, the thief was simply required to restore what was stolen plus an additional penalty.
4 to 5 times more, according to what it was.
It wasn't a showstopper. Theft wasn't a showstopper. But it definitely was a character issue. But dealing with that character, and so you're actually teaching them responsibility. You're teaching them accountability, and here we're talking about restitution that is required in the cases of theft. Our justice system is really, has really just pacified a lot of these crimes. People still just to go to jail today, get themselves some meals, get themselves shelter, medical. I mean, we're supporting, but to have them get a job and to pay back, and plus support themselves, plus add a little bit to that. Man, that's a pretty good deal. I mean, that would definitely, keep me from wanting to steal again, And so this is just a great way. We see that, this passage, the penalty could be anywhere between 500%. Think about that, 500%, that he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox. So think about that. 1 ox, you got to restore 5 oxen, 500%. Or from 500 to 200. So he says, he shall restore 5 oxen for 1 oxen. He shall restore double, or 200%. So that's definitely going to make you think about stealing somebody's ox. And so again, this is just regarded as a positive vision for punishment of criminals, putting them to, as Laura says, a productive restitution, working, becoming independent, and paying back what was stolen. The thief was sold basically as a laborer, with the money from the sales going to the victim. And so he goes on, he says here, if a thief was found breaking in and he is struck so that he died, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. I've seen that many a times. They have videos out there where thieves are breaking in somebody's home and the homeowner just takes them out. It's pretty brutal. And I mean, even like, California is very, liberal in their laws. I mean, sometimes the thief actually gets protected more than the homeowner. And so it's kind of like, well, they got to die a certain way. You shot them on the way out, or whatever the case may be. And there's just a lot of stipulation there. But, we see here that the property owner had the right to protect his property with force. And we do too. I mean, and we do too for the most cases, right? But only, again, with reasonable force, we see here. And the assumption was that if it was a daylight, the property owner had the ability to defend himself short of lethal force. So he goes on, he says, the verse says, if the sun has risen on him, there shall be guilt for his bloodshed. So that's just kind of talks about, somebody breaking in your home and kind of the requirements and the restitution on that. But I think there was a situation where two men were trying to rob a house during the day, and the husband and the wife were in the house, and so the two men went in, and the husband was a big dude, and these two men just couldn't overpower him, and so they show a video because everybody has that door camera now, that little ring, and they show they show the husband just beating the dude up outside, and then the other guy's still inside. I'm not sure if he's knocked out on the floor or what have you, but then one of the criminals gets away, but then the husband goes back inside, and I don't know. They just said that the guy inside ended up dead. So I mean, go figure. Maybe the wife went and got a gun and took him out. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's not worth it. It's definitely not worth what, $20. Stealing. It's just crazy. People are desperate, and unfortunately, we have the right to protect ourselves. And I think that we should. I know you may not agree with having some type of gun or what have you, but you should. We live in crazy times, and we should be able to protect ourselves. And again, our laws are at a place now where they're trying to take those rights away. But when you look at the biblical perspective, the Mosaic law, we see that they were able to protect themselves. So let's go ahead and move on. Baby, do you want to add something to that? Or you want to move on? All right. Let's go ahead and go to verse 5 through 8, and then I'll let Laura go ahead and expound on those verses.
It says, if a man causes a field or vineyard to be grazed and lets loose his animal, and it feeds in another man's field, he shall make restitution from the best of his own field and the best of his own vineyard. If you want to, I think that's pretty simple to understand. You want to expound before I go to the next one?
Well, you want to verses 5 through 8. Did you read verses 5 through 8? That's kind of all.
If a fire breaks out and catches in thorns, so that standing grain, or the field is consumed, he who kindled the fire shall surely make restitution. If a man delivers to his neighbor money or articles to keep, and it is stolen out of the man's house, if the thief is found, he shall pay double. If the thief is not found, then the master of the house shall be brought to the judges to see whether he has put his hand into his neighbor's goods. Whoa.
Yeah, so we see here the first part of that, verse 22. If a man causes a field or vineyard to be grazed and lets loose his animals, and it feeds in another man's field, he shall make restitution. Again, there's accountability. That's what I love about the Lord, is that he allows for accountability. And in other words, the owner of the animal was responsible for the grazing of his animal. He was obligated to respect his neighbor's property, the grazing land. And so, this is a really again, good principle. This is good business. It's good life. It's a good way to live. if we can apply these things to our life, you know, and actually Jesus takes it a step further, right? Love the Lord, love God, and love your neighbor as yourself. So,
you know, I like the part where it says here, it says the best of his own field and the best of his own vineyard. It's not just like you say, okay, here, let me give you this part.
Yeah,
you make that good. It's almost like softening the heart of somebody who's been wounded and saying, here, I really am sorry. Forgive me. I'll give you the best of what I have to make up for my animal feeding on your field.
Yeah.
And that would make someone appreciate and give forgiveness more freely.
Yeah, and maybe, sorry, go ahead. Maybe you've had something like that happen to you. Maybe you've, you know, I mean, you could share in the comments if you've ever experienced something like that. Maybe you've done something like that as far as, you know, being kind to your neighbor, or maybe their dogs come over and did something to your house and, you know, they've kind of repaid you. That's one of the things that I think back when I grew up as a kid, that we would do that kind of stuff. But today, honestly, with the way people live, I mean, not that I don't want to meet my neighbors, but I really don't know a lot of my neighbors because they don't come out of their house. I mean,
I'm getting to know some now.
But you know, back in the days, like we had kids, and your kids grew up together in the neighborhood, and kids were playing together. The streets were full of kids. You know, you're playing football and you're making basketball. And today, it's just a different type of environment. And a lot of our neighbors, we just don't. The way they build the homes, it's like they have the garage door opens, and then they shut the garage door, and then they go into the house, and you never see them. So,
you know, I can visit my neighbor via Facebook, and I can visit my neighbor via Instagram. We are in a digitized world.
What is that thing that you do for the neighborhood? It tells you everything that's going on, all the drama. What's that called? What is it called? Don't you have the app?
No, it's not neighborhood
No,
watch.
there's like an app, right? And everybody's in there, you know, and everybody's just being nosy. Everybody's just being
off topic.
But what I'm saying is that that's the kind of stuff that we do now. That's the kind of stuff that we.
Well, we have, you know, connected neighborhoods digitally, and
it's called Next Door. Next door,
yeah.
And it's just a bunch of drama, but
not all the time. Sometimes there's good information.
We'll let you know.
Out for each other. People, I saw one the other day.
A lot of stay-at-home moms just looking for stuff to say.
No, the other day, actually problem solving. Somebody was asking about their internet connectivity and the strength. It was, and I just got curious and I started reading the advice that a neighbor was giving another neighbor. It was really sweet. There was real problem
like,
solving.
You're the person I've been talking to for 10 years on Next Door, but never met you.
It was real problem solving on neighbor next door, and it was actually very sweet.
Well, in the neighborhood I grew up in, I mean, we used to get, our neighbors would bring us tortillas. Our neighbors would just drop food over our house.
We have neighbors like that.
And
too.
Who? Where?
Next door to us. They drop off. They barbecue.
Oh yeah, we
time.
have one neighbor, and they're so long, and they're a blessing.
And then we have another neighbor down the street who'll check on our house if we are not home and risking it. You know, we are very blessed, Sir Vasquez.
Yes, and we also have a neighbor kind of down the street in the next block, and they own a smoker, and they have all this meat that they're advertising on Instagram, Facebook, and. Yeah, we haven't got invited over there though, but you know what? I'm just playing. But no, it's just a great way. When you have, I think I was talking to an individual, and they're retired. They could retire. Money's not a problem for them, and he says, you know, me and my wife, we can move, and we can move, you know, to a retirement place. He says, but you know what? It's because of our neighborhood. It's because the neighborhood that we live in. Whenever we leave our garage door open, you know, they'll come and they'll tell us, hey, you left your garage door open, you know, or they'll come and shut it. And he says, you can't find that. And I think that, you know, here is that kind of that example. And things happen, guys, right? Things happen. The dog gets out, stuff happens, and your neighbor sometimes has to deal with that, you know, coming from you, and sometimes you got to deal with that coming from your neighbor. But I remember, you know, one neighborhood, I did a ride along with a police officer when I was younger, and I remember we went to a call.
Stories for days.
Yeah, we went and did a call, and these neighbors are literally fighting over a fence being put in the neighbor, like inside. They were fighting over their property line, and it was crazy. Like the cops had to be called, and there's a property line set by the builders. You know, yet they were still fighting over, you know, this property line, and they were literally getting ready to throw blows, and it was crazy. So I just think that this is a great principle that to live by. If something does happen, give them, you can give them a little card, a little thank you card, take them a little plate of food, just say, hey, thank you, for being so kind, sorry, all those things help. And that's part of, ministering to your neighbor, right? That's all part of loving your neighbor as yourself. And so, yeah. Again, restitution.
Definitely went on a rant.
All right. You want to go ahead and keep reading verses 19 to 13?
You mean 9 to 14?
9, yeah.
Or 15? Okay, sure. If a man delivers to his neighbor money, if for any kind of trespass, whether it concerns an ox, a donkey, a sheep, or clothing, or any kind of lost thing which another claims to be his, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges, and whomever the judges condemn shall pay double to his neighbor. If a man delivers his neighbor a donkey, an ox, a sheep, or an animal to keep, and it dies, is hurt, or driven away, no one seeing it, then an oath of the Lord, this is interesting. Mm-hmm. Then an oath of the Lord shall be between them both, that he has not put his hand into his neighbor's goods, and the owner of it shall accept that, and he shall not make it good. But in fact, it is stolen from him, he shall make restitution to the owner of it. If it is torn to pieces by a beast, then he shall bring it evidence, and he shall not make good for what was torn. And if a man borrows anything from his neighbor, and it becomes injured or dies, the owner of it is not being with it, he shall surely make it good. If its owner was with it, he shall not make it good. If it was hired, it came from its hire.
Awesome. You want to talk about that?
Sure. It's basically, if there is some question here in this verse, then an oath of the Lord shall be between them both, that he has not put his hand into his neighbor's goods. Basically, if animals were wealth, the animals were their wealth. So if you went away or you had to go somewhere and your neighbor took care of your animal, and the animal that, obviously your neighbor has animals as well, but it's your animal that you left got injured and none of his. There's a question mark in the person saying, hey, why is my animal the one that was eaten? Why is my animal the one that was injured? It can make a neighbor curious as to, did he not care for my property like he cared for his?
Yeah.
And it was brought before the Lord to see if that was the case. And they actually had to take an oath to see who was saying the truth and what was the truth. And then that had to be taken before God. And, coming from Exodus, taking an oath before the Lord, you could die, right? It's a serious matter to say, on God's truth, this is what happens. That's why today when you go, I don't know if they do this in the courthouse anymore, but when you go to court or you're on trial, what is it that they use to put it's brought from these types of illustrations in the Bible, that you take an oath of truth against the ultimate truth itself. So it's interesting how when things can be murky or that, and then it says here, right? It does to his neighbor's good, and the owner of it shall accept that, and he shall not make it good. So if it was truly an accident, if it was truly, then it's okay. You're not liable for it, and that was to make no restitution in some of those cases. But then he goes on to say, if you're borrowing anything, it becomes injured or dies, the owner of it being with it, he shall surely make it good. Like if you borrowed the ox and the ox died in your care, then guess what? You're going to replace that ox. You didn't steal it, but you're going to replace it.
For example, maybe
it's like a car.
Maybe you can share if you want, but maybe somebody's borrowed something from you and they brought it back broken,
or it got stolen.
or it got stolen.
Right?
I mean, how did that feel?
I'm like,
How did that make you feel? Probably not good, huh? Probably very angry. And I think that when, back in those days, they took you at your word. So if you said, if your word was your bond, so if you said something, then they were going to believe you. But also, you got to ask yourself, were you one of those persons that maybe borrowed something, you broke it, and then you took it back? Or you knew it was broken, but you took it back anyways, and hoping they wouldn't find out. I mean, it happens. But at the end of the day, like, as Christians, like, we got to be better than that, right? And even if we got to repay it, even if we got to go out and buy it, we have to be a good testimony. And that's part of what Laura was reading about, how this person gave up from the best. It was, look, I'm sorry, I can't necessarily replace that, but I'm going to give you something better. And when you look at this oath of the Lord shall be between them both, that he has not put his hand into his neighbor's goods, and the owner of it shall accept that. You see, now, when we look at the New Testament, and we go forward, we look at the New Testament, it makes it clear that believers should avoid taking legal dispute. I know we live in California. We live in a very
litigious state.
Legal dispute happy state. And but there's a process for the believer in the New Testament that we should avoid taking legal dispute amongst themselves. And why is that? Because we're going to secular judges. So what does the Bible tell us to do? The Bible says that we should allow the matters to be judged by the church. And we see that example in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. And see, this is stuff that you guys got to be teaching your kids, your family. This is stuff that we live by. And so we tie it into the New Testament because
that's
it's like,
when it's believer to believer. But
how many times you're like, well, I'll sue you, I'll take you to court. It's like, are you a Christian? Are you a Christian? Look at the way Christians, and you guys go to the same church, you go to the same neighborhood. How do we deal with it? There's a biblical way to deal with it. In 1 Corinthians 6, chapter 6, verse 1, it says, "Dare any of you, having a matter against another, go to the law before the unrighteous and not before the saints." So, in other words, you're going to a judge that is secular, he's worldly, and he says, "Do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And if the world will be judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters?" So the saints are going to judge the world, and you're going to the judge. We're going to be judging the judge of the world, and you don't think the saints that we have wisdom to the Holy Spirit, and that we can't judge the smallest matter?
Well, basically, it's the Holy Spirit, right? That they don't have the Holy Spirit. The judges are secular, so they're deciding law based on their own common sense derived from self and thinking, which isn't always wrong. But where is the Holy Spirit and mercy applied? Where is the forgiveness? Where is the clarity of truth?
Yeah.
We look at the O.J. Simpson case. Talk about secular, everybody thinks like, whoa, did he do it? Did he not? Well, according to the law, he got off on a huge technicality, right? But it doesn't clear him.
What is it?
Guilty.
It didn't fit, so must acquit.
So we have to look at what it means according to God's law.
So he goes on and he says, "Do you not know that we will judge the angels? Mm-hmm. How much more things that pertain to this life," he says. "If then you have judgment concerning things pertaining to this life, do you appoint those who are at least esteemed by the church to judge? I say this to your shame. It is so that there is not a wise man among you, not even one, who will be able to judge between his brethren. But brother goes to law against a brother, and that before an unbeliever." So that's what was happening in the Corinthian church. They were suing each other, and they were going to the worldly courts.
And they were both believers, and they were going to an unbeliever. What a testimony, right? Two believers suing each other, going to an unbeliever, saying, "Hey,
help us out.
Help us out. This is Christianity." The unbeliever would be like, "I want no part of it."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I want no part of it. It's crazy.
And then he goes on and says, "Now therefore it is already an utter failure for you that you go to law against another. Why do you not rather accept wrong?" Why do you not rather let yourself be cheated? Like what he's saying is that it's better for you to be cheated than go to be this bad witness into this worldly judge. It's like you're doing a disservice to God. It's okay. God will redeem you. God will bless you with what you lost. But it's, you know what it comes from? It comes from pride. Oh, I'm right. You're wrong. It comes from ego. There's no spiritual matter at all in it, because if you're truly loving each other, you're going to esteem one another better than yourself. It's okay if you take a loss. And sometimes, guys, in life, you will take a loss. Like right now, we're quarantined. How many of you have taken a loss? And we're dealing with it, aren't we? We're dealing with it. We're learning to deal with it. So a lot of it is our perspective. A lot of it is like, oh no, I have my rights, and you're not going to treat me that way. And it's in Paul is like bringing the fire here. He's not nice. He's not like, no. And here's the deal, guys. This is the way the church needs to be run. And he's saying here that you've already failed, for you go to the law against one another. Why do you not rather accept wrong? Why do you not rather let yourself be cheated? No, he says, you yourself do wrong and you cheat, and you do these things to your brethren. He says, do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived, he says. Neither fornicators, idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals, nor sodomites, nor thieves, nor covetousness, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners will inherit the kingdom of God. And such were some of you. But you were washed, he says. But you were sanctified. But you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus and by the Spirit of God. So he's putting it in perspective. He's saying, you guys were on your way to hell, and yet God forgave you and God redeemed you. And now you're arguing, fighting, and going to the world over what? $20, an ox, a car. Really?
Well, an ox was your working vehicle. It was your tractor of the day. It was your mobility, your donkey. These were your possessions that these were the things that were of value.
Yeah.
And people would sue each other, obviously, even back then.
But here's the thing, guys. God says that we need to have dominion over the world. You need to have dominion over your possessions, not your possessions having dominion over you. And when your possessions get you out of character because it's overpowered you because of a loss or because of some type of disagreement, you're not having dominion over your possessions. Because if you did, you would take it and you would do the biblical things. And there's so many Christians that will act like this, going to court, taking people to court, suing them, because you can't treat me like that. Now, again, what are you supposed to do? Now, for example, I'll give you an example from my life. One time, me and a brother had a dispute at church. Does that happen? Yes, it does. We're living stones. Iron sharpens iron. We spark. We rub up against each other. We sometimes just don't get along with a brother. Sometimes because we're fellowshipping and because we're, with each other, things happen. You looked at me wrong, or you said something to me wrong, or you let a brother borrow something and they broke it and they didn't fix it. And so it's like $300, $400, whatever the case may be. How do you deal with that? You don't take him to court. You go to the church. And that church has a leadership. That leadership, has been prayed over. It's been it's Holy Spirit filled, and you need to trust that leadership. And that leadership is going to go to God, and so you're going to be there.
Better go to God, or else that leadership is in trouble.
And so what's going to happen? So what happened was, me and a brother had a conflict, and we went to our church leadership, and we sat in a room, and the church leadership heard me out. The church leadership heard him out. And they came up with.
Well, there was also a witness.
They came up with a deciding factor of what. It's not even who's right or who's wrong, because honestly nobody wins. But it was just to help decide the matter, right? Because at the end of the day, when you go to these worldly courts, you know who wins, and that judge or that testimony, your witness, and it turns off all those people in there going, yeah, that's why I want to be a Christian. Look at these guys. They say they're brothers. They say they love each other, and look, they're in here suing each other. You know who wins? Satan wins. That's who wins. Satan wins. And when you bring it to the church, we're able to deal with it in a biblical manner and give it to God. And I got corrected. I mean, obviously, like it did rule in our favor, but I still got corrected. I was serving, and they told me, hey, listen, you know what? You're gonna have to sit for a little bit, you know, and deal with it. It was something that I think I was about 23 at the time, and you know, I didn't run. I didn't get mad and say, oh, you know what? I'm gonna leave the church, and how dare you tell me, you know, that I can't serve anymore, and you know what? Get mad at the leadership. No, you know why? Because I respect that leadership, because I knew that leadership was called by God, and in that, God put them in my life.
And they weren't unfair.
And I sat for a whole year. I was in the men's ministry. I was serving, throwing trash. I was serving in ministries. I sat for a whole year, and it was tough because I love serving the Lord. And in my mind, I was like, man, I could just go to another church. I can just leave. But no, God told me, if you run, you're always going to be running. And you know, we stayed at that church. We worked through it. I worked on my character. I worked on myself. And you know what? Look at where we're at today. All because, you know, because we yield to the Lord, and we take we take it. I respected that leadership. I honored that leadership because God put them in my life. I may not have liked it, but you know what? We dealt with it biblically. And you know who got the glory? The Lord. The Lord got the glory. And so when you look at these matters, they're you know, things happen to us. We have to go to the Word of God, and we have to ask ourselves, how do we handle this? We may have to just say, you know what? It's a loss. You know, businesses take losses all the time. You know, they take losses all the time. And
they take risks.
They take risks. You take losses. In life, it's the same thing. If you think that you're not going to ever lose something in life, like you're just lying to yourself. Like, things are going to happen. You're not always going to made whole.
Well, people will take advantage of your kindness. They will say they're going to do something. They don't. They make you sad, and it's just like, but you said you. But it's part of life, and that's why the Lord says, you know, we are to have love for one another, to try to understand, you know, why they would do something. And sometimes we never will, because it's not for us to understand.
What did Paul say? I count it all loss, you know, for the sake of the gospel. And here's the deal, you know, as a pastor, and you know, in God's church, you know, we've seen a lot of people take advantage of God's church. You know, we've seen a lot of people come in and use God's church. And you know, it's tough. It's tough because you want to protect God's church.
But it's
you know,
not
you want to, you know, and God goes, listen, you don't need to protect me. I don't need to protect God. Like, I can't protect God. God protects me. Mm-hmm. You know, and He reminds me of that. He's all, yes, you're the shepherd, and yes, He says, but you know what? You're there to, Peter. If you love me, love my sheep. If you love me, feed my sheep. Amen. And so there's a righteous anger. But at the same time, we have to let God protects His own church, and God will deal with that person. But what should we do? This is what he says, and then we're going to close with this. He says, and this is in Corinthians, and as Paul goes on, he says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not helpful. So what is Paul saying? He says, you know, I have all this freedom, and all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. And he says, all things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. So he's saying, I have the right to do these things. Yeah, I can have the right to go to court. I'll probably win, but it doesn't mean I have to do it. You know, it's kind of like a marriage where, you know, maybe a husband cheats on a wife or a wife cheats on a husband. Yeah, you have the right to maybe go file for a divorce, but it doesn't mean you have to do it. What is God calling you to do, right? That's where you have to really seek out the Lord. And I think that's where maturity comes in, because you may have the right to do these things, but God's saying, no, don't do it, because this is what I want you to do. And that's what Paul's saying. He says, all things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Food for the stomach and stomach for the food, but God will destroy both it and them. Now the body is not for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. And God both raised up the Lord, and will also be raised up by His power. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? Shall I then take the member of Christ and make them members of a harlot? And again, it all goes back to just being that witness. And he starts there, chapter 1, about taking your brother to the court and about being that witness. He says, yes, we have freedom. We have all these laws that we can do certain things. He says, but I'm not gonna put myself in a position to dishonor the Lord. He says, I'm gonna glorify God in my body. Not in my body, in spirit. And that's why he says, For the two, he says, shall become one flesh, but he who is joined to the Lord is one spirit with him. And then he just goes on and he just talks about, again, fleeing sexual immorality. He goes on talking about every sin that a man does.
That plays into tomorrow.
Does it play tomorrow? Okay, I'll stop right there.
Monday.
We'll go ahead and stop right there. But it's some good stuff, guys. And I know it's tough because, we live in a world where, it's not fair. We play by different standards, different rules. And you look at the world and they're, they don't care. They'll sue you. They'll rip you off. They'll do all these things to you.
It's sad to say that we say the world, but have you heard of stories where supposed brothers and sisters in the Lord do that too? Mm-hmm. And that's the part where it's you look and you think, like, with all this social media, with all of this, then there's good stuff. Like I said, that when I looked at Neighbor Next Door, they were helping each other out. There was good things happening, but there's bad things in the kingdom of the children of God, which is why he puts these regulations, why he is coming in and saying, hey, this is the way you should treat each other. You guys should treat each other with kindness and with the best, and and then make oaths with each other before me to see who's saying the truth. So God says, go before me. He is the ultimate and righteous judge. He is the one that could see through our lies, if we're lying, if we're telling the truth. And at the end of the day, there is nobody but God and you when we're standing at that judgment seat, that Bema seat. It'll just be us, and all of that communication, lies or no lies, or wrongs, being wronged or wronging, that has to go on the altar here and now. We need to bind it today.
Yes, and guys, just as we look at these standards that God is bringing in, is because there's integrity behind it. There's humility behind it. There's dignity behind these things. These are the foundations.
Well, you can come from a neighborhood. I've seen neighborhoods in certain parts of just people where they come up on one each other. I remember hearing the term, I just came, that brother just, I was like, what the
I just came up on that brother.
I was just like, what the heck does that mean? What kind of sling language is that? And it's unfortunate when I found out what it actually means. I thought, what in the world is this all about? Why should you be coming up on a brother? In my mind, I was like, why do you do that? And then I realized when I was growing up, I have a sister and I worked at a clothing store, and she came up on all my clothes, and so did her friends. So now I was like, hey, I could use that term there. I'm like, they came up on a sister. So don't come up on a brother, and don't come up on a sister.
Amen. If anything, esteem a brother, esteem a sister. See how you can help them, how you can make them better. I was talking to a gentleman today, and he was telling me, he's an older gentleman, he was telling me, in the 70s, how he was turned off by Christianity because of all the hypocrites and the bad witnesses. And it's there, guys. It's there. The church is the church has a big responsibility, and we have to take ownership as well for the bad witnesses that we have been. And even today, there's churches out there that are doing these evil things, and
it's the people. It's not the churches. It's the people in the church.
And it really just does a disservice, and that's what it comes down to, guys. We're here to be the church. We have so much authority and power in Jesus Christ. But when we commingle the world into the church, because that's what the Corinthians were doing, then you have what is called it's I can't even think of the term right now. It becomes very hypocritical. It becomes very discouraging, and
it's damaging.
People are watching the church. People are looking for integrity. People are looking for honesty. People are looking for somebody love. And somebody's not. Hey, listen, Satan's already taking advantage of them. Satan's already doing all that. And then to come to church and then feel like you're being taken advantage of, it's like, wow, where do I go from here? I might as well go to an occult. I might as well go. And it's sad that people have to leave the church to go to the world to feel like they're not being taken advantage of.
Or loved. Accepted in certain
or being
ways.
treated fair. So we have a big responsibility, guys, and I want to give you a challenge today. We want to go ahead and end with a challenge. and I can tell you, you know, as a pastor, we don't have a perfect church, but here's the deal: we definitely do our best to exercise biblical principles, and to make sure that the church is ran in a way where, you know, God is going to be honored. God's going to be honored, and so what are the challenges? We're going to go ahead and I just want to let you know these challenges were designed from our beautiful daughter, and we asked her for help, and she's like, okay, I'm going to help you with some challenges, Dad. So I'm going to have my wife go ahead and read. I think we're going to do this challenge. This was probably a good one for this study.
Yeah, come up with 2 ways you can be more personable or kind to your neighbors.
2 ways.
In quarantine, to your kids, your friends, sharing it. For example, it could be an experience or a funny story you've shared, or playing with your child. So, you know, today it was, we talked about neighbors and restoring neighbors, you know, your restitution. So your neighbor, you may not even know them. So maybe take them some, I don't know, popcorn.
Well, like Laura was sharing, we have a neighbor. They're from Samoa. Where is he from? Samoa. So he likes to cook. He likes to barbecue
every weekend.
And he's out in his front yard and he's cooking it up. And I mean, they literally cook pigs. I mean, that's how crazy it is. But it's neat when they bring a plate over. It's like just that in itself, an extension of food. There's so much like love in that. It means a lot. And they don't really even go to church. You know, I don't even think they go to church, and they witness to us because of that. And it's like, man, you know, as Christians, maybe you're cooking up a barbecue or something, and maybe there's a neighbor that God puts on your heart, and maybe you could just go over with your little plate, put a little thank you, or not a little, but a little card of, hey, you know, boom, put a little Bible verse on it, and just say, hey, you know what, I made this, and I just got, you know, just want to bless you. So, you know, little, or another thing you can do is just put, make some gift baskets, put some scripture in there. You don't have to put your name on it. And, you know, in the morning, you can just go put it by a couple doors and, you know, bless somebody.
Or cut flowers from your garden, put them in a vase.
Yeah.
I don't know.